this Pokemon right here, best Pokemon in Generation 9. Beats everything except for Chien Pao. The stats, we've talked about the stats many times because this power creep is some of the dumbest we have seen in Pokemon, and you just respond to everything. Oh, special attacker with tons of damage, even super effective hit? Cool, Metal Burst it. Sucker Punch, that's priority shenanigans. Kowtow Cleave, well, late in the game, when you lose some Pokemon, now you're just a 135 attack Pokemon. Doesn't matter if you're invested or not, getting free damage, and then just dealing more damage. It is the ultimate bruiser Pokemon, and you also have a one-hit KO out to destroy tanks or just beat hard sweeping Pokemon because you don't take damage. And that's like where all the synergy comes in. Max hit points, max defense, you soak up physical moves like they're nothing, because they pretty much become nothing at that point. Assault Vest, GG easy. But what about Kingambit's little bro? Can we just make like the nastiest, most broken Bisharp as well? And that's like a really weird thing. When a Pokemon is viable, and then Game Freak gives it an evolution. So now we have a Pokemon that's viable, that also just became stronger because of Eviolite. Now I know there's already been a lot of thoughts and dabbling with how well Bisharp works, because like, okay, if Kingambit's this broken, Bisharp already like has seen play in Pokemon, is there a Generation 9 ugly Pokemon Scarlet and Violet meta angle on this Pokemon? It's like, yeah, Bisharp actually better than we thought. Is there a way to just kind of optimize this Pokemon? Well, damage theory it is. So I wanted to just kind of bring raw damage calculations to the table. So we have Arceus, max attack, max special attack. I'm going to plug in an Earthquake, and then I'm also going to plug in an Earth Power, and then we're going to compare and do all of that math. So that's already silly. That's already stupid. So 120 non-stab, I guess, like, you know, non-adamant, non-whatever, but like just a sweeping Pokemon with 120s using a super effective non-stab move, Kingambit just doesn't care and takes less than half. So we can see like the Earthquake, Earth Power kind of same. This is the Assault Vest stat. Well, how does that look with the Bisharp? Like, where does the damage trade-off come in? Also, if we're playing the Pokemon differently, you know, this Bisharp set, Rest Sleep Talk. That, like, you just win here. Actually, if we're going Metal Burst, maybe we go minus speed, unless like the tank matchups get kind of weird. I don't remember plus relaxed. Okay, good. So like there's just so many of them. I mean, do you actually run relaxed here as well? Maybe as low the IVs as possible. Now getting 0 IVs, very annoying for modern generation, but maybe like you want to underspeed the 70s, but then speed creep the 65s or something. So maybe there's an angle here, maybe there isn't. But the idea is like, okay, if you Metal Burst on a Sleep Talk, that could just be a KO after you heal up from full. And if you roll Guillotine, well, now you just have more Guillotine PP. And if you just cannot be KO'd because you're way too tanky, maybe we got something here. So let's go back and see what those numbers look like and how much tankier or how less tankier the Bisharp is going to be. Earthquake, Earth Power. We take more damage. So, oh wait, we don't have the Eviolite. We take less damage. Oh boy, did I mess that up. I put the Bisharp EVs for the Arceus EVs, and the damage calculation got all bad. So ignore that, but it still like looks really good. So comparing it to Kingambit, we are slightly less tanky than the Kingambit, but this is where damage theory is. If everything's a 3-hit KO, then everything is a 3-hit KO. Also, we do have the sustain, so that's a pretty big deal, and that's still really good. It wasn't about like, oh man, Bisharp needs to be 20% tankier on the Eviolite to make it work. It's really just the same idea of, well, if we don't get KO'd and then we can just Rest, Sleep Talk, Guillotine everything, and this is just going to be like super effective high damage rolls. Like, we are Kingambit. We take the same amount of damage as Kingambit. We have sustain with this one, and it just kind of shows viability of Eviolite, and if we get through the other weaknesses like Substitute, then we win the game. That's the point. Why isn't this the new crack thing? Seems like we got really quickly in that damage theory, and also, it's more Eevee theory because we're not like, oh, what if we go Swords Dance here and we try to, you know, see like at +4 uninvested, we're one-shotting. Don't need to. At 0 attack, we're at -6 attack, we're one-shotting everything on the Guillotines. And then if we're just playing like Tank Metal Burst Revenge, or like countering hits on an effectively infinite pool of hit points, while being tankier than one of the tankiest, dualisty, brawliest Pokemon in the game, this might just be it. This might just be how you crack and solve the game, because that's what we learned from the effectiveness of the Kingambit with the Guillotine. And as we've learned from Kingambit, like, Guillotine is what makes this Pokemon, because, like, you just have one of the best Oko users aside from Dondozo, and then you also can just KO anything, a physical attacker or a special attacker. The Fiery Dance interaction, very interesting, because, like, okay, we don't even have to Terra, we just soak a Fiery Dance and then Metal Burst back, and then we have, like, Sucker Punch for 1/1+. We go Terra Ghost to, like, get into some interesting damage calculations on super effective hits like Earthquakes if you're just going for the Guillotines, or if you're trying to reduce damage and combo outs, where it's like, yeah, Metal Burst and Earthquake. You actually take so little damage from some Earthquakes that the Metal Burst doesn't KO, and then you do need to follow it up, but then you just get bailed out on damage. However, the ability doesn't kind of, like, break Bisharp, where it's like, well, Kingambit's better because of the ability and, like, direct damage outs. I mean, Pressure, very powerful into Encore, because Encore has so little PP. And with how battles are getting more drawn out and people are using the 5 to 10 base PP moves more, now I still have a bone to pick with Game Freak on how every signature move now isn't 8 PP but it's 16. But even then, like, you can still burn through opposing moves surprisingly with Pressure, especially if they do end up having a 5 or something. Like, yo, if they're trying to guillotine you back and they get really unlucky, they can just run out. Or if they've already, like, used 3 to KO one of your opponent's Pokemon, that threat might not even be there anymore. Same thing for Fissure, because if they run out of PP, it's just feeling really bad. So Pressure having the weirdness of being just a strong ability even inside of Generation 9 with all the power creep and stuff. As for why Kingambit doesn't run it, because we do have this offensive stuff to where, like, oh, the even +1 Supreme Overlord, Kowtow Cleave, Sucker Punch might matter, especially if, like, 2 Pokemon have fainted in 3v3. Now we're actually dealing with something significant here on that bonus damage on the very high base while being too tanky to KO. Now, Kingambit does have some problems. Even though it is the 1v1 master that succeeds at all stages of the games, it's a lead, it's an anti-lead, it's a cleanup sweeper, it's a revenge Pokemon, it does everything, but a Pokemon battle is dynamic, which is a big thing that Smogon players don't understand. That you're not given Stealth Rocks for free, or that there's going to be, like, weird situations that happen throughout a battle that are going to reduce a Pokemon's ban ability. Like, if Kingambit gets leech seeded or statused in some kind of way, like a burn is going to hurt that potential to just come back and, like, okay, just double Kowtow Sucker Punch something if the Metal Burst or Guillotines aren't reliable enough. Like, you start to have problems, especially with your sustainability, because you don't have any recovery when there are just tank Pokemon that are technically tankier and have the recovery, but they have different threat profiles. So that's where things happen. Like Bisharp, it can just shrug off status. It can go to sleep. If an Amoonguss comes out, like, here's the problem with Kingambit. Amoonguss comes out, you miss Guillotine because Kingambit doesn't want to win. Now you're asleep. You can still survive and bulk out and wait for your next wake up, but you can get into a bad situation. This doesn't care about sleep. This doesn't care about status. This doesn't care about Leech Seed, kind of. Like, everything cares about Leech Seed, even tanky, sustainy Pokemon, but, like, okay, at least, like, you don't have a set timer on your life bar at that point, and you can just, like, rest, take that Leech Seed plus the other tanking, and then you're going to be fine. So the sustain is kind of where Kingambit fails. And then that made me think, like, have we been running Kingambit wrong? Maybe. There's just some other stuff to where without the Assault Vest, can change it up to go max hit points, plus defense. This 4 is kind of here for, like, speed creepy things where you want to out Guillotine, but also kind of not, because it makes it weird on Metal Burst, since Metal Burst doesn't have negative priority. But then I was thinking, like, Citrus Berry Kingambit, probably the same effective durability as Assault Vest Kingambit, so it does open up status move options, but also just kind of, like, depends on what Pokemon you're running and where, because the Assault Vest just giving you that durability against special attacks, but then we can change it to where, well, actually going 252 is almost an Assault Vest, which is kind of interesting when you break down the EVs. We are giving up some defensive durability, but we get that back in the Citrus Berry. This is mostly for, like, the overwhelming Terra super effective hits, or, like, the annoying special attackers, to where it's like, okay, you still don't get to do anything to me as a +2 Golden Go that doesn't have Focus Blast. Assault Vest also removes a lot of the variance in certain special attacker matchups where it's like, okay, Iron Bundle comes in, it can start subbing, or it can be specs, or it can just lay down too much damage. At least, like, the Assault Vest soaks so much off of that special attack to where, like, okay, I can just, like, keep kowtowing through all their nonsense, and then it makes it harder for me to misplay, where it's like, I go Metal Burst, they go sub. Because I'm kind of scared if I'm sitting on, like, some kind of other EV set or item set on the Kingambit. With this, like, okay, I can just throw attacks and we win this matchup. And then, like, there's even, again, those super effective hits on the Assault Vest where it's like, oh, I'm not forced to Terra here because I can eat that super effective hit so well, and then now we have the Metal Burst or whatever other move I want to go for on the Kingambit if I need to go for it. The thing is, Kingambit is so bulky that it really doesn't get one-hit KO'd, and you have the terrestrialization to really make sure it doesn't get one-hit KO'd. Like, non-stab fighting moves are just randomly survivable on the Kingambit, unless you start getting into, like, very high attack or some kind of, like, boosted hit or something. So I think what it shows is that Kingambit doesn't need the Assault Vest and can also run a Citrus Berry if another Pokemon on your team wants the Assault Vest because of effective health stuff. But it also means that we might not need the Citrus Berry either. And I think we can run a similar thing where you go Chesto Resto. So now, instead of just having some amount of special defense, effective health, or Citrus Berry making you a 125% Pokemon, we have Rest, which can make you like a 170% Pokemon on just item consumption. Now, we do give up a move slot, but do we need Sucker Punch if we're a full health Kingambit? Like, there's going to be way less situations where we're hurt by this, where it's like, okay, well, now we just take the full health hit and hit it with a Kowtow, which also kind of removes the variance of any kind of Sucker Punch Mon games. Like, it does feel really nice when you get the sweeper down to a Focus Sash, and then you can just clean it up because you have the priority move in your pocket, or feeling like you kind of have the guarantee against an Assault Vest Pokemon, against a Choice Item Pokemon, where, yeah, I can Sucker Punch, and there's nothing you can do about it, and I win the game. But if you just, like, kind of eat that hit anyways, it's fine. And then this is where Chien Pao gives us problems. Faster Pokemon priority means, like, the mind game levels get too high, and you could just misplay and kind of throw, where, like, the Kowtow Cleave just kind of seals it regardless. So I think then we kind of have the same idea, where it's like, okay, Rest, Guillotine, Metal Burst, and this is also going to be really nice for, like, some kind of stalling matchups where, well, if I just, like, Rest, and they can't KO me anyways, we don't need the Chesto Berry because we wake up, get a turn, and then can Rest again, because Kingambit does get that filthy. So kind of, like, using Bisharp development to see if there's Kingambit optimizations on, like, if you don't want to run both Kingambit and Bisharp, like, your Kingambit can look like this, it can still look like this, you can play around with whatever. Or if you're running both, you can have this Kingambit that can also run the Citrus Berry if that's how you're feeling. And then you have the Bisharp with just, like, Rest, Sleep Talk, Metal Burst, Guillotine. I feel like at this point you also need to go deeper into team building, because what screws this Pokemon over more than anything is Substitute. Like, this Bisharp still loses Substitute. This Kingambit still loses to, like, bulky or resisty Substitute, or if you fall behind on Substitute. So, like, you play a sound-based Pokemon behind it, and then I think you just kind of win the game. Oh yeah, it also means that Rest, Sleep Talk Kingambit, so the same Kingambit, can also have a Leftovers, and then that makes the battle really weird as well, because Bisharp is tankier, but it has to give up the item for it. This is less tanky, but over the course of the battle, you're getting, like, that free health, and maybe if they're doing, like, some weird damage numbers to you, the Leftovers actually takes it over to where, if you didn't have it, you don't wake up on the third turn, and then get to, like, Rest again, and then, like, kind of keep cycling. But with Leftovers, you do get it, and that's just, like, where the damage numbers are through power creep right now. So that's kind of, like, some weird interactions. As for, like, the sound-based Pokemon, like, I'm not saying, like, oh, just run Sylveon, Hyper Voice, and then Shred through every sub. There are some Pokemon that give that problems, and I don't know if those problems are actually, like, more common to where, like, yeah, you know, if you have to either predict the sub, which is very risky, but just going into a Hyper Voice Sylveon that can Terra Fairy is probably fine in a lot of situations. Like, if this Pokemon really only loses to sub, also talking about Terra type, like, I think Terra Water might be the best on this Bisharp. This Kingambit just wants to do, like, the cute, oh, I absorb your fighting type move, and then you get guillotined or, like, Kowtow into KO range or something. But if you're just, like, staying on the field forever, just go, like, Terra Water, don't care about anything, this Bisharp is good. And then I don't know, like, what is the best complete total anti-substitute Pokemon in the game. I don't think it's Sylveon, but there's like a lot of sound play inside the game and like bypassing sub shenanigans that can happen. Is it just sitting into like the fattest roar Pokemon to ever exist or something like that? I haven't done the work into figuring out that Pokemon, but when it's pretty much only Substitute that beats Kingambit, if you're running Kingambit, Bisharp, anti-sub, that just wins, right? That might just be one of the nastier cores in the game, because there is a philosophy where it's like, yeah, you just anti the meta, and a lot of the meta is anti-setup and like too much sub spam and a lot of ugliness like that. So even though it sounds like there probably is a bad Pokemon that's been overlooked forever that has like this one niche, but it's like, okay, if you just play that and they don't have a sub, you kind of int. Well, Kingambit and Bisharp are like 2 Pokemon each, so you have 4 versus 3, which means you do have a free slot to throw away on just anteing the one thing that counters you, because it's actually in half of battles for some reason. So yeah, there we go, guys. Big theory work, because like, okay, Kingambit is the best Pokemon. Why not Bisharp? Why not just play the Bisharp that beats really everything, and then core around that with the Kingambit that handles everything else, and another Pokemon that kind of works on it, but also using the Bisharp development to potentially improve the Kingambit and how it works on your team, because it isn't just like, oh, this is the best, most optimal EV item set on Kingambit. Citrus Berry is effectively the same, and then that kind of like shows other options you have access to, which can also play for your team building, regardless of if you're using Bisharp or not. So, boom, Pokemon Theory expansion. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.